Let's see. All right, good. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to tonight, March 24th, Zoom call at 8. Appreciate you guys all showing up, and look at our special guest has already showed up. My name is Julianne Peterson. I'm with Old Capital Lending. I'm a commercial lender there, and we've closed over 7,500 loans and over $1 billion in 2019. So if you want to keep us in mind for future loans, I would appreciate that. I am your host tonight, but I'm going to push it over to Michael Blanc because we don't get to see him too often. And we are super excited to have you, Michael, join us for a moment in time to speak to us. Give us your thoughts, your encouraging words, where you're finding yourself, where you're finding the market, and maybe just some words of just some ideas for everybody.
Some ideas, yeah. Hey, how's it going? Good to see you guys. So everyone's kind of figuring out. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Julie.
Yep.
Kind of figuring out what this all means for us. Is this kind of bad? Is it good? What's going to happen? So I don't have the answer to those questions. It's very fluid. It really changes by the day. So I mean, I'll just give you some perspectives here. If you own property right now, then there are certain things, that we're doing, and that may help you. If you're looking for deals, I have some thoughts around that as well. I think what's really important right now, if you are considering buying property, and I'll get back to that in a second, or you have property, the biggest thing I learned from the last recession, which some of you guys have learned as well, is to never run out of cash. So typically a recession is normally it's not going to get so bad that a business or you're going to lose a property. But if you run out of cash, it limits your options considerably. So what I love about the multifamily business is we have multiple tiers of margins of error built in. So for example, we have investor distributions that we can play with, right? So we might, even though we might not distribute distributions this quarter or maybe next quarter. So we build up a cash balance in case we need it. We don't know if we're going to need it or not. And we should always be taking cash reserves out of cash flow to build up a reserve every single month, every single year for emergencies and capital expenses, that kind of stuff. So we have quite a cash cushion to play with. We then have a next cushion, which is most properties can operate at a 70% or even lower occupancy before they break even and we can't pay our mortgage anymore. And then the absolute last tier is we can't actually pay our mortgage anymore, which is the absolute worst case scenario, which we would lose the property. And now we already see that a lot of Fannie Freddie lenders are talking about forbearance and things of that nature. So even in that absolute worst case scenario, the probability that we're going to lose a property is very low. And so the other thing, there's two things. One is really communicate with your investors to they're kind of freaking out a little bit. A lot of them still have money in the stock market and they're freaking out about that. And they don't want to freak out about this multifamily thing. So putting them at ease.
Michael? Do we lose you?
Looks like he freaked out.
Yeah, I'm freaking out. I'm just gonna have a sip here.
You're back.
So putting your investors at ease that you are preserving cash as much as you can. So maybe not distributing, possibly working out payment plans with your vendors, things of that nature. I'm not even talking about, what we may encounter. We'll probably know more in April 6 to 15 when our April rent is due. March looked pretty strong for us, but the crap didn't really hit the fan until about 10 days ago. So it's not really a true measure of what's going to happen. And then what we have decided to do is really work with our tenants, especially the ones that have a good payment history. If they've been affected by this whole situation, we want to work with them in the sense where we might work out a payment plan with them or a lease modification, meaning that let's say there's only 3 more months left in their lease and we need to potentially, and they need to maybe not pay a month or so. Maybe we can work out a payment plan or even lease modification where we say, okay, lease is up in three months, but why don't we renew it for another year? And then we'll spread those payments out over whatever, 15 months of some sort. What I'm saying is increase the level of communication with your investors and increase the level of communication to your tenants. So we'll see. If you're, it really depends also on where your tenants are, what your demographic is. And frankly, I don't really know where we are with that either. If they're heavily in retail and restaurants and travel, they're going to be affected more than others. For example, we now know that Walmart is hiring like 40,000 people. CVS is hiring like 20,000 people. So while on the one hand, people are losing their jobs, others are crushing it. Like, they're just crushing it and they're looking for help. So I don't know where we're going to end up. Work with the tenants, make sure they know what resources are available to them. And we don't even know this right now as well. We've heard anecdotally that filing for unemployment is very easy, and they're trying to get, the money's flowing again. So trying to figure out where the hotlines are and putting your tenants in touch with the hotlines to help them kind of take advantage of all these programs that are coming out are going to be key as well. So increase tenants, communicate with your investors.
Hold on, Michael. Can you hold on just a second? Can everybody put their phone or their computer on mute, please?
Happened, one of our mentors, he actually he just bought a property yesterday or the day before. And what he did, smartly so, was he raised an extra $300,000 for the next, so he can make his mortgage payments for the next 12 months. So in other words, another 12 months of reserves in case, the wheels come off. He now has extra cash. Now this lowers your IRR when you do that, but it's not like you're spending the money. It's an iron reserve for emergency. And your investors are going to appreciate. The biggest mistake is running out of cash right now. This thing is not going to last a long time. It might last longer than we might like, but it's not going to last nearly as long as 2008 did, which was sustained. Fundamentally, the fundamentals in the economy were broken on multiple fronts. In my opinion, there's no fundamentals in the economy broken right now. It's just we have a freaking virus right now and no one can leave the house. But once that goes away, people are going to come back. So it's not, in my opinion, it's not going to be a sustained systemic thing, something fundamentally wrong with the property. So in my opinion, running out of cash is the biggest problem that we face right now. So making sure that if we do buy property, that we have enough reserves in there in case something happens. Now, the other interesting thing that we're seeing recently, like the last few days, is we actually are seeing some what we think are buying opportunities, and it's going to get even better, because what's happening now is everybody is afraid of stuff right now, and so the buyers are skittish, they're pulling back, and the sellers want to sell, and the buyers are like, well, we're not putting any money hard anymore. And we were like, that's how we got into the last deal. We put money hard down. This last deal we lost, this was 5 days ago, we lost in the best and final two. This was a $30 million deal, and no lie, the winning bid put in $800,000 hard day one. Like, we're like, dude, we're out. This game is too rich for us. And so now all of a sudden, no buyers putting money down hard, because we don't know what's going to happen. First of all, we don't quite exactly know what's going to happen with the capital markets. There's still we think it'll be okay, but who knows? Also, practical matters such as due diligence, like getting a lender to go out to the property right now, that's a logistical problem right now, because they're not going to hop on a plane. So how am I going to get the lender out to the property? Well, that's going to take longer. So now things like 60, 90-day due diligence are on the table. Like, that's crazy stuff. This happened all the last 3 days. Financing contingencies. Sellers like, well, I'll consider it. We're like, are you kidding me right now? And certainly there's no more hard money. So what I'm saying is, I think we're going to get some softening of terms that we're seeing. We're just going to see a lot of buyers pull back. There's going to be less competition. Sellers are like, oh crap, I missed the boat on this. I should have sold 6 months ago, but I was a greedy bastard. And, now I'm not going to get as much. And if the income does go down a little bit over the next 2 or 3 months, it's obviously going to affect valuations, right? It's going to affect valuations because the NOI is lower now. Trailing three is down lower. So I don't know. I think we have a window of opportunity where we can actually find some buying opportunities. We'll see. So I think people who are prepared, trained, capitalized, have their investors ready to go, we're going to be an advantage. And speaking of investors right now, so we talked about being an owner, buying stuff, but also, man, the ability to raise capital right now, it's like insane. It's insane. Now, I mean, right now, as we sit here, I don't think anyone's doing anything. Like, no one's leaving the house. You know, we're all sitting there sucking our thumbs in the corner, looking to see what's going to happen. So, is your investor going to invest right now if you had a deal? I don't know. We're going to find out. We're going to do an investor survey, literally, like, hey, would you invest right now if we found a good deal? Like, I don't know the answer to that. We're going to find out. We'll let you know what we find. Even if not, I think another 2 or 3 weeks of this, people are going to accept the new normal, and people are going to start coming out of their shell a little bit more. But I can tell you that people looking at the stock market and oh my gosh, I mean, it's been down like a third, 33%. We're down now where we were at the very end of 2016, beginning of 2017. Like, you look at this chart, we've literally lost like 3 years of profits. It's been staggering how much money people lost in the stock market. And so the conversation is going to go like this. Hey, how's the stock market treating you? Oh, really? Oh, that's too bad. You know, let me tell us what we're in. We have an alternative stock market that doesn't have the volatility and pays you cash and you don't pay taxes. And they're going to go, what is that? Drugs, prostitution? Like, tell me more about this. And you're going to tell them more about syndications, and it's going to be very powerful. So I think right now it's don't panic at all. Just kind of stay cool. I think we're all going to be fine. We're going to have some bumps in the road if you're owning property right now, just kind of where we are. But we're going to work through those things as we always do. But I think the capital raising opportunity and the buying opportunity is going to be pretty enormous, at least the next few months, I think. I don't know. Those are my thoughts, Julie.
I like it. Can you take a couple questions? Would you be open to that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Who has a question?
I got one. Easy.
Okay.
Should be a little softball for you, Michael. How much do you think is appropriate to keep on in reserves on a standard syndication?
So, all right.
And follow on, does COVID change your mind on what you've done in the past?
Yeah, I mean, I think cash is king right now. Cash is king. So normally we'll say if there's no there's no capex that you can see, we're still going to have $1,000 per unit in reserves. So, right, and we're gonna have and I forget my own freaking got a whole month of operating capital in reserve as well, right? Which I think right now is probably a bit soft, right? I think we need more. And of course, we're taking, let's say, $300 per month per unit per year out of cash flow into reserve. So we're 18 months into it. We're going to have a bunch of money out of that as well. But I think going into it, Phil Capron's approach is not a bad one. I mean, 12 months worth of debt service, that's a pretty nice little cushion. I think that's outstanding. So
now that's gonna be required, Michael.
Okay, fair enough. Good. But well, great. So the lenders aren't stupid either. They're like, hey, I don't know what's going on, and they're going to tell you what you need. But Julie, what are you seeing right now in the capital markets with regards to underwriting requirements and anything like that? And that's a very good, strong indicator of what we should be doing as well.
Yeah. So we're seeing between 12 and 18 months. Mm-hmm. Of debt service coverage. And if we're going into tertiary markets, we're going to 65 LTV, and we're seeing 1.35 debt service coverage. And you're then, in those tertiary markets, maybe 6 months. But for top and standard markets, it's 12 to, and it depends on the how big the loan is. So that's going to be your number one. And you're going to be, and you're going to be at 75. Yeah. Percent LTV.
Yeah, that's the biggest risk, Briscoe, and you guys went through that as well. It happened even in good times. It happens almost a little bit randomly, but we are seeing that. So there's quite a bit of risk, maybe not so much in getting loan, but getting the LTV, Julie. And we've seen the same thing and had people report the same thing where people in the last second are like, oh yeah, well, did I say 85? I really meant 65. And now the deal's dead. And so without a financing contingency, you're screwed because you can't. While you could raise the money, it decimates your returns and it kills the deal. You would not do the deal without. And that also is going to drive valuations lower. If now instead of getting 65, let's not say 65, but let's say it be 75, which is bad enough. We're used to 85 and 90, and now we're getting 75. The valuations are going to go down because of that. And so having financing contingencies that say, hey, if we get below a certain LTV, it triggers that financing contingency. That's a great way to protect yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I would highly recommend that. These reserves, are the lenders holding them in escrows? Are they requiring that you have them and you can show that you have liquidity? What kind of control are they putting on those
we are collecting them at close. At least that's the direction. Yeah, we'll be held. Yeah, they'll be held.
The intent with those really is that no one gets to use those things unless the wheels come off, really. So it's just money
Correct.
sitting there.
Yeah, there was some thought about using CapEx expenses to utilize that cash to get through the next couple of months. But if your business plan says, hey, I'm going to be doing these CapEx expenses over the next 18 months, and now you're using that capital to get through paying your bills, how does your business plan get completed, right? So I think there's a lot of influx and questions how we're going to get through this, just on, obviously on acquisitions.
What are the terms on that escrow, Julie? I know what circumstances is that being released? Is it time going by? Is it? Do we know?
I don't have that answer.
It's pretty.
Yeah.
So anyway, with great challenges and unrest and uncertainty comes a great opportunity. And I think if we can protect ourselves with these financing contingencies, we are going to get opportunity to do that. But I think financing contingencies is probably the way to go right now, because we don't really know what the terms are going to be of these lenders. And something like, 18 months in reserve held by us forever, that's going to be a problem, because now I got to raise more money. And now that money is not gone. It's just sitting there, and I can eventually release it as capital return, which will get my returns back down. But we'd have to get more clarity around what the terms are of that escrow.
No, it could be for only 2 quarters. So we're waiting for that information. But, in addition to that, you're looking at 1-year IO potentially. 12 months. And that's going to be amortized over 30. So you're not going to get your 10, it's not as much. So
yeah, we've all gotten so accustomed to underwriting stuff with almost 5-year IO, 3-year IO and 85, whatever LTV and 3%. and that changes things quite a bit. But again, I think because there's so much fear now and so many buyers are pulling back, sellers are going to get more motivated. They just are. They're like, I was planning on selling this year. And now they're going to get more motivated to do that. So I think now it's the time to get deals done. But you got to protect ourselves. Like if you're not putting any money hard, like we had a conversation with a seller, no money hard, 90-day due diligence and a financing contingency. If I can get in under those terms, I'm going to do that all day long, because I've now mitigated my risk. Right now, if the wheels come off and the lenders are going down to 65%, it's okay. I can terminate my contract, and not only that, but in 3 months, if NOI really is lower, I can potentially I can honestly reasonably retrade the deal, because the entire environment has changed.
Very good point. I'll let you have one more question. Is that all right?
That's fine.
Okay. Who else has a question? Rick?
I got a question.
I got a question. Oh, damn you. Go ahead.
Yeah. My question was about investors. What's your question?
No, go ahead. I was going to ask more about the uncertainty with bridge debt and how, 3 years out, 4 years out, interest rates might look different with, I don't know. I could see inflation occurring, but go ahead with your question. That's what I was getting at. Go for the investor question.
Cool. Yeah. Bridge debt's an absolute train wreck right now, almost 6%.
Yeah.
I'm looking. No, my question was, Michael, for you, aside from the obvious, benefits of multifamily, especially in a downturn, I can see a lot of positive as to getting or soliciting investors in, but can you think of a handful of things in this current environment that might encourage people to want to put some money into a deal as we seek these deals and people retract? Because there will be opportunities, especially as we start to come out of this thing with sellers that are fearful. Can you think of anything, Michael, that stands out that might be something we could sell the investors on?
Yeah, look at the freaking chart of the Dow Jones, man. There's your case in point. You're not going to see that happen in multifamily, even in 2008, which was the worst recession in ever. You did not see a ding in valuations like that. It's certainly not over a sustained period of time. So the loss of capital is fairly remote for the reasons I just talked about. Loss of capital is remote, which is very real for people in Wall Street. So loss of capital, not likely. That's the biggest thing. And then you get other various benefits like, hey, you actually get cash flow. Maybe not this quarter or next quarter, but we have cash flow, and then we have our tax benefits. So the biggest thing is certainty. we have the ability to provide a higher degree of certainty. And that's what fundamentally drives people crazy, is they can't do any reliable financial planning, right? They have retirement funds, they have 529s, they're trying to figure out when they retire, and they have no freaking clue. It's like a crapshoot because they can't control everything. And in 2008 wiped out half the net worth. We finally clawed our way back. Now we went back another 3.5 years. That's really what frustrates people. That's the biggest thing, is the uncertainty factor. And what we're trying to give them, we can't guarantee them anything. We're giving it a much higher degree of certainty and predictability of income and wealth.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yep. All right, guys. Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Julie, thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. Great to have you. We'll see you next
See you
time.
guys.
Thanks, Michael.
Okay.
Michael.
Can I jump in upon kind of what he was saying there, Julie? There's something I wanted. With regards to investors, I've been kind of checking the pulse of investors. I did a survey, and I've actually reached out directly to investors. And unfortunately for me, for my investor pool, a lot of them had money in the stock market. And as much as I have a blog post and I write and I say, think about if you're interested in multifamily, maybe you want to be moving your funds into cash. You could say that all day long, but people were seeing the market rise, and history shows now they've lost whatever 35-40% of their portfolio. They're feeling pretty poor, although today was a bit of a comeback, but tomorrow could be 2,000 points down again. That's what I'm hearing. I do have a few brave souls who are they were ready, but that's one of my it's true. Multifamily compared to the stock market, safe investment, mitigate your risk. But unfortunately, a lot of investors still keep a lot of their money in the stock market. So that's what I'm up against currently.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to share before we go to the next? We're going to hear from Chris. He just closed a deal.
I have something really quick. I just wanted to make a comment.
Sure.
Us lenders are not really excited about student housing right now. I saw a deal today, and we decided to pass on it. We're just not really wanting to look at student housing right now. So just a thought there. I don't know what are you seeing other lenders pulling out on that too, Julie?
Student housing and assisted living, so senior housing as well. Those are not a direct focus for Fannie for sure. And I'm hearing that banks are running out of capital. My banks that I'm working with, they're not finding themselves there, but I've had some folks talk to me saying that their local banks, which is, grandma bringing her capital in and you guys using her capital, she's out. She's pulled her capital out. So I think there's a great opportunity for Fannie moving forward. Fannie's all about providing money for multifamily as well as having liquidity in the market. So going forward, yes, we are seeing rates. We just got a 35 basis point raise from Freddie. And now we're on Fannie, we're up at 4.85 to 5, depending on the market. So it's intense, you guys. And I'm talking to lenders and they're saying, sit tight. There's a lot that's going to be changing. As Michael said, your T3s, your in April and May are going to make significant, there's going to be a complete difference on those. And when we go to the appraisers come in and they look at that and evaluate it, it's going to create a lot of questions. So I would continue to listen to podcasts. I'd continue to learn, look at deals, talk to investors, I think there are opportunities out there, but those opportunities are going to be changing. So you just want to make sure that there's flexibility in your contract.
Julie, we have a question. This is
Sure.
Kavita and Deepak
Yeah.
here. Yeah, this is regarding, we just heard recently about one of the deal we were looking at, and they were talking about the bridge loan. And still, as of today, the bridge loan from the bank rate is much cheaper on 4-year IO basis, around 4+% compared to Freddie Fannie now. The rate has jumped, LIBOR jumped to almost 90 basis point on one, plus higher floor rate. So that gives you much more interest rate versus this bridge loan. So, but I heard recently from Chris saying bridge loans are expensive. So
That's correct.
but why he's getting at lower rate and it's just IO only, or
Well, if
40.
you've got high leverage,
No,
or
he's putting, I think 80-20, I think is around, the underwriting is on 80% loan and 20% equity. So it's not even big requirement as well. So
I would,
25
I can't speak to the quote that you got, but I can tell you that I am
No,
not seeing.
me. I was working with another person, so
Yeah.
on one of the deal. So.
Yeah, I would say that we are not seeing bridge loans that low, nor are we seeing 80%. I haven't seen 80% all week on bridge loans. So, as new investors, everybody, you really have to have a solid plan. A lot of lenders are going to be pulling back on bridge loans for new investors because you don't have the track record. So if you're really interested in a bridge loan, and I would say in the last 3 to 6 weeks, that's kind of where everybody was going until this blew up, is to make sure that your plan is very, very solid, where you're going, where you are now, where you're going, and how are you going to get there? What's it going to cost? How long is it going to take? How do you know that that plan is going to work? You have to have solid information from the competitors in your area, and that takes some time. We have to set the stage. We really have to know who the deal sponsor is to make sure that they have experience, because obviously it's fairly volatile right now, and not having a track record. A bank is just not going to go, hey, here you go, here's $1 million, go for it. We really are, they're going to see a lot of pullback on that, at least in the short term. Okay. There are ways to get around financing in the short term. So you can get a 5-year loan, and you can get the interest on that a little bit higher so that you can get out earlier. Okay, there's a soft prepayment penalty option. So you can have a lot of certainty in a short amount of time and if you wanted to do it that way. So I would highly look at other ways to go about a short-term loan like a bridge loan. Okay, and again, right now we're only seeing 1-year IO. That certainly works better if you've got 3 years IO. But we're shifting by the hour. I mean, I'm getting emails every several hours. I'm getting updates on how we're moving forward with this, and so we just don't know. So I would say keep looking at things. Again, keep learning how we're going to be moving forward when this thing shakes out.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. The person we were talking, he's a deal sponsor who has 1,000+ doors. So
yeah, so that's good.
He got something, yeah. So,
that sounds great. All right, anybody else before we want to hear from Chris Roberts before the evening is over. We're halfway done tonight. Is there anybody else before we push it over to Chris that has a question, that's looking at something before we move on? No? Okay. Chris. I want to give you about 15 minutes. If you could tell us about your deal that just closed, how you got into it, where it is, why you chose that, who your partners are, all those good things.
Sure. Thank you, Julie. So we'll make it as short as possible because obviously every deal has a lot of complex moving parts and can go on and on. First and foremost, I definitely want to thank my team because we have a pretty dynamic team and it's large. Our GP group consists of approximately 8 people. And the reason it's that large is we have sponsors and group investor relations, which is what I'm in charge of. Construction, there's a pretty heavy value add to this building. So we brought in a lot of different people at different percentages. But where the major advantage was to this, and real quick, I'll name some of the partners. Paul Cox, who's on Phil Crone, Robin Michelle, just great people that are all in these groups. Some of them are on Slack and Mass. The real benefit to this and having these partners, and I guess this is probably what I want everyone to take away, is oftentimes when you get in a deal, and I'm in single family, multifamily, larger scale, duplexes, all kinds of stuff. And I find that if I can increase my velocity of deals, I don't mind sharing a piece of the pie. I've just never been greedy like that. It's like, I don't need to be 40% of a deal just to make a couple extra bucks. If I can do 4 deals and be 10 or 20 or 30%, I'm perfectly fine with that. And so one thing that was really cool, especially as things started getting a little weird here, was in the capital raise. And so everyone brought something to the table. We may have had a lot of people in the group. I think as a percentage, I happen to be number 2 in the ownership of the GP. That's because I took on the entire responsibility of CRM, investor relations, software, communication, all of that stuff, which was a tremendous amount of admin work, and then also raised capital. But when you bring everyone together, we were able to quickly raise capital. And then as Michael brought up in his point, what he was referring to with that extra reserve was my partner, Phil, who raised that extra 300 at the very end to give us that bumper. So, a $2.8 million raise ended up being a little over a $3.15 million raise. And thank goodness, because we closed at 0 hour at like 4:47 in the afternoon with the check. Phil called me when he was sitting in the office. We closed and we got the call from the broker like 10 minutes later saying 12 bridge lenders just pulled out of lending. And that was, I think, last Tuesday. Yeah, it was last Tuesday or Wednesday. And they said, you guys got there in the nick of time. Deals literally just blew up. Like $50 million worth of the loan just blew up like within 10 minutes. And so we got very fortunate, but it also was very helpful that we were able to raise that capital before everything blew up. So my point is, as especially new syndicators, don't be afraid to source definitely a main sponsor to help you with your deal, but to also network with others that perhaps may have a little capital. Maybe they just don't have the experience and they're like, but I have access to capital, or I have an aunt that has this, or I have an aunt that has that. Don't be thinking, and I know the rule of thumb is less is more, and you should only have 4 or 5 partners, and that's fine. But when you're getting into a deal, if you have a strong sponsor and he's cool with it, maybe he's getting 10, 20, 30 points in the deal. If you got to bring in 5 or 6 or 7 other people to make a deal happen, you do what you have to do to make a deal happen. And remember that that's a nice little security blanket and everybody gets to learn together. Maybe on your next deal, you trim that back to only a few people, right? But don't be afraid to do that. Don't let somebody tell you how you need to be doing syndications. You do whatever it takes to get the deal done and protect you and your partners. That's the first thing. So specifics on our deal. The way I got into it was I'm in the Michael Blanc mentor program. And right out of the program in October, I got pretty aggressive and got in on a 112 unit deal that I'm still kind of working. I happen to be the lead on that one now. It's been kind of challenging. I will literally write a book about this deal when I'm done, I swear, and I'll give it to everyone for free. It's going to be amazing. This deal's been crazy, especially with all this going on. But as I've been working on that deal, my mentor had said, hey, you've been a really strong person. All the things you're doing, I love it. Would you like to get in on a deal with me? And we talked about it, and it so worked out that I took on all the admin, the investor relations stuff. And he hadn't really done these larger scale deals like this with this dynamic of the investor relations and all that. So it was great for me because that's my strength. So I offered to take that piece off of his plate. And as a result, I got a nice piece of the GP and then did some capital raising. Now, my point to that is that if you're in a mentor program or you're trying to get in with a group of people, your energy and enthusiasm is not going to be enough. You have to actually work and add value and bring something to the table that will take workload off of your sponsor or your mentor or whoever. And if you do that, you can earn your way into a deal. And if you're earning your way into a $10 million deal at, say, a 12 or 13% GP share, that could be significant down the road, right? Because those are some big deals. But oftentimes these mentors and these sponsors, they don't they're willing to do the work. They've done it all, but they would rather have the students do the work, or the people that are bringing something to the table do the work and learn, and then they can sit back and make their piece, right? But if you're not bringing something to the table, you're out. And we found, no offense to anybody, but we found as we started talking to people that there were some that had it, they could step up and do things, and others that couldn't even raise $25,000 when it came time to raise money. And it's like, well, how are you ever going to get on a deal if you can't even raise $25,000, right? So again, that's the reason why you kind of want to make sure you have the right team and make sure you're bringing value. Otherwise, you're just wasting everyone's time. So on this deal, it was 104 units over in Virginia. Value add 30 units were already renovated, so we knew the model was working. The rents had been raised to our target. We took it over, partnership that was falling apart. I think one of the owners was ill, and we got a great deal. I can tell you now that when we took it over, before we even got it appraised, the seller had gotten an appraisal at 11 million, and we bought it for 9.2. So we were going in really strong. And then our plan is to renovate the 60 units, raising rents somewhere between $125 and $150. We had lots of cash reserves. One of our partners is a contractor who was partners with one of my other partners on another deal. So he's on the ground, and Phil actually moved into the building. So one of our GPs is living on the building and doing some of the asset management right from the building. Then they'll be sending me all the reports and all the numbers. I'll be putting a presentation together with Rob and Michelle, and Paul Wilcox will be working together to get all that communication out every month to the investors. But it was a really good learning experience for me. This was my first big deal that I was on. I'm already working on my own deal, which is a massive project. But it was great for me to get into this piece because I literally led the entire investor relations portion. And so if you don't know what your strengths are, maybe you're a good salesperson, a good talker, good with spreadsheets or whatever, make sure you bring that to whoever you're trying to work with. Hey, I love this stuff. Let me take the lead on that. Whoever you're working with will love that, because if you know your strengths, then speak about it. Get it out there. If you have capital, if you have access to 401k money and you want to be a passive investor on a deal, or you have some cash, please tell whoever you're getting involved with exactly where you are financially, so they know, oh, that's that person's strength. That's their position. Great. I had mentioned that to one of my counterparts when he first started. He wasn't sure how to kind of get out into this world, even though we were kind of equals as we started. And I said to him, well, what's your value proposition? Who are you? What's your finances like and all that? And he shared it with me. And I said, dude, you don't realize it, but you could be a huge value to a team, but you need to tell everybody exactly what you just told me. And he was like, wow, okay, I guess I didn't think of it that way, right? So just remember always, and they say bring value, but what does that mean? It means bring some work, bring something that you have a specific skill set to, and then just constantly get out there and talk to people. Otherwise, you're not going to be found. With my mentor, he's got lots of students, and he said, Chris, I have lots of students and love all my students, but some have been here for 1.5 years and haven't done a deal. And I found a deal within 2 weeks, and then got on my second deal within 2 months, right? And I'm working on a third deal already. And that's not because I'm a rocket scientist, guys. It's because I hustle and I'm talking to everybody, and I'm just, how can I add value? How can I learn? How can I be part of the team? So anyways, food for thought. Are there any questions about that deal at all, or anything else I can add?
I'm going to ask a question.
Yeah.
How do you feel about getting that capital, the rent raises right now on those other units?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a good question. Well, I think all of us, you put these fail safes in your deal always, right? You have contingencies, you have backup plans, you have what ifs and all that. And the general conversation right now with all deals, besides the underwriting and the lending, is holding back investor distributions. Everyone's talking about that, right? Well, that's part of it, because that's part of the value add and bringing up the deal. Now, at the end of the day, worst case scenario, if the world froze for 6 months, investors wouldn't die. I mean, they're losing money in the stock market for the most part, or going to be catching up on their 30% losses for the next who knows how long. So they're going to be okay sitting there knowing that their building's there. If we have to hold off on a few renovations or on a few units, or slow roll something, or even raise the rents a little lower than we thought, that's perfectly fine. But I think most of us believe in the industry, and I have single families and duplexes, and I've been talking to all my tenants. And most of us believe, especially with what the government's talking about throwing out there, that we're not going to suffer substantial vacancies, right? What we're going to have is not necessarily economic vacancy, but some bad debt. And if you're savvy and you have a little bit of reserve to carry you through, you should be fine. I think everyone's like in an oh shit phase right now. Like, oh man, what are we going to do? The sky's falling. That's not reality. We're not in 2008 as it relates to real estate. And we will bounce back. And especially if you're, in my opinion, if you're in those C and B class properties, because like in our case, this building I'm looking at now, we're the lowest rent in town. So it's like, well, where's everybody going to go? I mean, you know, $500, $700, $800 a month rent versus maybe $1,500, $1,800 a month rent. That's a little bit tougher to make. So I would say just be positive and just really underwrite the hell out of your deals and make sure that you're putting a ton of fail safes in, because no matter who's shopping a deal right now, we're all going to be in the same boat. As a matter of fact, I just threw an offer back at the seller I'm working with, and the broker's like, well, and I said, have you watched the news? You know, and they're in a state that hasn't been affected like Seattle, and everyone's like in denial. And I'm like, just watch the news in New York and Seattle. You'll see it's coming. You're going to be on lockdown. Things are going to, you know, your economic vacancy and all this kind of stuff. So, yeah, we're not concerned about it. We're just going to have to step back a little bit and be a little more conservative on executing our plan. But we've already ordered supplies. We're going to start renovating units. So.
Anybody else have a question for
Yeah.
Chris?
Yeah, I just had a question for you, Chris. As a new investor wanting to hustle, contact brokers, find the deal, like what size deal should I be trying to bring to a more experienced investor or potential partner?
You know, it's so funny. I love your question. And here's why I love your question. So when I signed up for Michael's program back in October, he asked me what my goals were. He said, what's your goals? Like in the audience, raise your hand. I raised my hand. And I said, well, my goals are to raise $1 million by the end. This was October. Raise $1 million by the end of the year, get a deal under contract by the end of the year, and have 100 unit. I think 100 units was it was 100 units, right? And he's like, wow, those are really audacious goals for 2.5 months from now, right? And I said, yeah, but I'm going to hit them. And I basically hit them, right? And I'm well on my way to hitting the year goal that I had. That was just the end of year. And people say, oh, that was luck. And it was, sure, maybe it was. But if you don't tell yourself and you don't set parameters, like for example, I get this a lot. And so my point is, don't be afraid to go big. The point is though, is how are you going to get on board with someone going big? Because you're not going to be able to do likely 100 units on your own. So who can you partner with to get to 100 units? And I'll use the 100 unit example because that was my goal, was 100 units. And people ask me why. They said, well, don't you want to start small? And I said, well, I've had a few duplexes and single family. The reason I want to go with 100 units is because, yes, raising capital is a little scary on 100 units, no matter what neighborhood you're in, right? You're talking millions of dollars potentially, versus maybe 10 or 20 or 30 units. But I knew that type of deal might be easier to sell to a bank with no recourse, and to be able to pool different investors and different partners from all over the place, because you're sharing that risk along all the cost segments with property management and everything else. And you're able to get a lot more people to look at that deal from a management perspective. So the reason I said 100 was I knew that's where all the players were going, 100, 200, 300 units. And if I just stayed below where those guys were going, which was like the B plus, A plus stuff, I could probably find a niche if I could just out hustle people in the C and B minus type product. And that's exactly what I did. And I found a deal really quickly and then just got really aggressive on it. So it's okay to start out small if that's your comfort level. And if you're trying to do it on your own, like a JV deal where you're each bringing maybe 50,000 and you're just going to buy like a 30 unit or 20 unit property, no problem. But if you want to get into syndication, you want to get into the bigger deals because it doesn't offset the cost of legal. I mean, my legal costs on this one deal alone are going to be about $20,000 for the syndication alone, right? So you got to think about all those things. So just, you have to put your own goals together and then start searching for property that fit within your comfort level.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Anybody? No? All right, Chris, thank you so much for sharing.
Sure.
All right, let's see. So does anybody have a question in regards to the 401, I'm sorry, the 1031? Last week we had a great speaker. He is going to be doing another webinar this Thursday. So Nathan Webb, I just posted the last week's Zoom at 8 on the Slack channel. So take a look at that. Closer up to the top, I posted Nathan's. He's going to spend some time talking about syndications, 1031s. There's a couple other things that we were talking about that he's going to target. So look at Thursday. I know there are tons of people doing webinars now, and I can spend all day long listening to webinars. There's that. I mean, that's obviously the mode of communication now. I hope you all liked my picture, my dance. I didn't get very many people making comments on that, but I didn't see anybody step up. What's up with that? All right. So check out Nathan Webb. Really good content there. Anybody else doing any webinars that have been helpful that you'd want to share? This is the kind of time where we could learn from each other. Typically, you know, I've been having speakers, but I thought for the next couple weeks we could have more of sharing kind of Zoom calls so that we can, I think there's a sense of, you know, uncertainty, and we just kind of feel like we have to get grounded, get back to being grounded. So is there anybody here that's working on anything on a podcast that you want to share that you felt that was worthwhile?
Hey, Julia, this is Chris again. I just want to make sure that everybody knows, obviously we have partners on here and I'm not sure if everyone here is aware of them, but you know, John Fortes with his Passive Investor Show, and then Wealth Junkies, which is a great show. They're putting out a ton of content. I was honored by John by being interviewed by him the other day. It was a great show, but they're putting out a lot of good content as well. And, you know, there's Neil Bawa and all these other people that are putting out good content, but the critical piece with the webinars and the podcast is just to make sure, especially with downtime, that you're constantly educating yourself, because there's a lot of really good content. I told somebody earlier, it's like my 7th or 8th webinar and Zoom call today. And I was listening to podcasts all night last night. You have to constantly do that, just if anything, to encourage yourself and keep you kind of fired up while there's downtime. But those guys have a lot of really good content on their shows as well.
Stuart, we haven't heard from you. Let's hear from you, please.
Chris just gave the plug. So
what have you been doing since we haven't seen you in a couple weeks?
Oh man, what have I been doing? Not much real estate related. We backed out of a 34 unit deal that we had based on what was going on. We just felt like, you know, it was probably not the right timing to move forward. So we took a little bit of pause there. And as far as real estate goes, I've just hit the pause button. I want to see how things play out. My attitude is that all those buildings will still be there 2 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now. I'm willing to be that guy that takes the chance that I might miss out on that great deal. So I'm pretty comfortable waiting it out and kind of seeing how things play out. I think by April 5th, we'll probably see enough posts about, you know, how many missed rent payments there are and what those percentages are really going to look like. I think if I've been trying to keep an eye on my phone to see if the legislation is passed tonight and what exactly it includes. So I think there's going to be a lot of incentive for people to not pay their rent. And, you know, hopefully there'll be equal incentives to help property owners get through it. But I think we're in for an interesting few months, and we'll see how things shake out and, you know, kind of go from there. So.
Excellent.
Laying low on the real estate side for the moment.
Yeah. So for those of you who are on the phone, that are on the call and have assets, hey Shaka, can you put your phone on quiet? Thank you. So are you guys, any of you guys calling your lenders? Are you calling your tenants? Can anybody share with me their experience? I did call, so I have my duplex, as we've chatted about before, my $2.49 a month capital that I make on my duplex here in San Diego. Put it up for sale about 3 weeks ago, and now nobody can go. We can't have open houses. We cannot show it. So my tenants are moving out this weekend, and you know, I'm going to be out without a tenant for I don't know how long. I mean, if we can't, they're talking about 8 weeks being on quarantine. I listened to Trump today, and he said, no, we're going to be done by Easter. So who knows, But at what point do you say, hey, I'm going to call my lender. I'm going to call my bank. I know what I'm hearing, which is get ahead of it. If you only have, 3 or 4 months of reserves, you should be calling now just to be getting them aware. Hey, don't wait until July. So I'd like to take a temperature of those of you who have assets. What is your focus, and what are your thoughts?
I would agree with getting ahead of it. I think, we have a great relationship with our lender for our commercial properties. We talk with her all the time. She's in tune with where we're at from a business standpoint. This is not my real estate business, my staffing business. I spoke with one investor last night who has a bunch of smaller properties and a small apartment community. He's looked into his options. There's a very simple form on his lender's website. You fill it out, you submit it. Forbearance is being offered by a lot of lenders. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have already announced their 90-day program, I believe. So I personally, I don't know that I would have pulled the trigger on anything until I see what legislation comes out and give it another day or two before let the agencies catch up a little bit to whatever legislation gets passed. Because I think that Chris and I were on a call prior to this one, and I brought up the fact that our country doesn't reward people who do the right thing. And what I mean by that is if you struggle and you personally can afford to make those payments and move forward, you will not be rewarded for it. You may get a thank you in your email for receiving your payment, but that's all you're going to get. And if you have the opportunity to skip a few payments without it doing any damage to your credit, without it doing damage to your deal, things like that, if the handouts are there, you're not going to be thought of any differently for taking advantage of them. So you have to look out for yourself, and you have to, cash is better when it's controlled by you. And if 3 months from now, everything works out and everything's hunky dory, if you want to make up your payment, make up your payment. But I think if you can take the opportunity to hold on to cash and you being in control, you're going to be a little bit better off. It's my personal opinion.
Stuart, it's funny. We're talking about lenders and what are we going to do? And there's going to be all this easing for tenants and, low income, specifically employees that make under 75, not low income 75, but the bottom line is the statute is going to say under 75,000 or whatever. But what about us? What about independent contractors, business owners? And it's funny because while I was on this call, I've had 2 emails already. I see them coming in on my phone from lenders. I have 8 different mortgages for different properties, and they're all working with us. It's like, hey, we have these 5 options for you. What do you want to do? If you need something, let us know. I'm tied into the corporate world. I represent for a $6 billion company, billion, that's B. And those guys have sent lots of letters out. Hey, if you need extended terms, if you need this, if you need that, utilities are sending emails out. Hey, we're going to defer. We're going to help you. So I am starting to see businesses and people, as Stuart said, as the dust starts to settle in and go, okay, we realize the government's going to step in and dump a ton of money into this environment. We need to ease a little bit as well. And I have a feeling in the next 2 weeks or so, we're going to see some significant changes and we're going to feel a lot better. We just have to hang in there. And so, yeah, to your point, Stuart, wait a day or two until the legislation comes out, but also understand that we are going to have some easing as well, whether you're an independent contractor, a business owner, or an entrepreneur. We just don't know what that looks like yet.
Well, and if you go back to 2008 and the years that followed, there was a lot of incentives. I think Obama did 3 different bailout packages that rewarded banks for relieving debt and things of that nature. So, the banks are probably feeling pretty confident that there's a safety net there, and not working with people in the moment may hurt them on the back end. So, banks that don't cooperate are probably going to get penalized, and banks that do cooperate will get the cooperation. So I think there's going to be a lot of options. I think the one good thing about all of this is no matter how long it lasts, it's temporary. and it's defined, right? So we don't know whether the definition is 4 weeks or 12 weeks or 6 months, but we know there's an end somewhere. And, that's probably reassuring on some end. It's just a matter of, can the country recover from the amount of the stimulus that gets pumped in?
Yeah, I am also gonna plug the Old Capital podcast. Paul and Michael are the hosts of that, and Paul he's very conservative. He's the owner of our company, of Old Capital, and he really believes this is not going to be a short-term deal. He's thinking more 6 to 18 months. So it was interesting to just listen to what their perspectives are, just to get a feel what other people are thinking. So you check that out, oldcapitalpodcast.com.
What in particular does he think is 6 to 18 months? Lockdown?
This is going to come, that we're going to see it really come back to where, not where it was before, but
the cycle.
People are able to pay their bills, and whether it's inflation, we just don't know. But he says it's going to take a good 18 months. So it'll be interesting to see. So, well, you guys, we're at our end. Does anyone have a closing thing that they want to say before we shut down tonight?
Yeah, I want to make one plug. I've got partners doing a podcast, Rent Roll. His name's Sterling Chapman. Rent Roll Radio. Sorry. So I just want to put that out there. He's bringing a lot of value.
Great. You might want to also put that on Zoom. Put it on the Zoom at 8, just so that everybody can go there if they didn't have an opportunity to write it down. So there are lots and lots of new faces here, guys. I know that having Michael Blanc here was certainly an encouragement for you all to show up. I know I've got some faces that were here every week, so thank you for those folks. Daryl, for showing up. It's always great to see you. Welcome to the new people. And so in closing, I always like to quote one of the greatest football coaches of Notre Dame, which is Lou Holtz. He has 3 things that he says: do the right thing, do everything to the best of your ability, and always show people that you care. So on that note, have a great week, you guys. Take care of yourselves, take care of your families, and I'll see you next week. Thank you so much. Have a great, great night.
Good night. Have a great night.
Thank you, Julie. Good night.